back. This is part 2 of Buddhist books, chapter or whatever section, Pāli Scriptures, in which I read anything I can get my hands on having to do with Pāli Scriptures. That is to say, the earliest writings, the earliest Buddhist writings, the scriptures and commentaries on the scriptures from early times, and more recent commentaries on those original scriptures. Anything to avoid having to move on into the Lotus Sutra and Mahayana. Anyway, I'm trying to go by century, starting with the earliest stuff. So I read Dhammapada. I don't know if Dhammapada was the earliest of the Theravādan literature, but, I'll kind of do my best. I thought it would be fun. The room, I don't know if you can even see it, but the room is filled with smoke. There's a lot of incense going on in here right now. So I thought that might have an interesting visual effect. And because of necessity, the lighting is a little different. It's nighttime. Maybe this is better. I don't know. We'll find out. My electrical outlet is over here, and my phones, one of them is the lighting and one of them is the camera, are both low on battery because I just sort of spontaneously decided to do this, and so I didn't charge them as I normally would. Anyway, that's enough talking, I'd say. Yeah, you can see the smoke kind of hovering over here. That'll be interesting to see, because I just added a little bit more frankincense to the charcoal. It felt like frankincense today. I went to the Tibetan refugee colony a few days ago and got 4 different kinds of Tibetan incense. For example, Manjushri, remember him, right? From this brand. Not sure what that says, but it has Tibetan writing on it. So when I run out of incense, it's always a conundrum because I don't feel like I can throw it away because it has Tibetan writing. It probably just says, made in Tibet by Fred, but it's Tibetan writing. So to me, it feels like scripture. So, yeah, I thought I'd mention for people who are paying attention, personally, at this point, I'm discovering that I'm much more drawn to Theravāda than Mahayana. I really fell in love with Dogen in around 2011 when I read Shobogenzo for the first time. And my dad was into Nyingma Tibetan Buddhism by way of an Italian-American whose family lived in Russia for a while, who was his guru. And he had learned from a man, I believe, named Castaneda, but probably not the one you're thinking of if you're thinking of one, who had learned from a man called the Tibetan, not the one that was channeled by someone. I'm not familiar with all of that really sort of, I'll be nice. Insert adjective here that you might use for people who channel books. Yeah, so I'm going for the more solid stuff, but I'm a bit cult phobic because of my earlier life, which had more to do with Western esotericism. So I'm delving into Eastern, but I'm not interested in having a guru or joining any groups. So I have sort of a sentimental attachment, if you will, speaking of Buddhism. What would Buddha say about that? To Tibetan Vajrayana. And my mom was very into, as an architect, into the aesthetics of Zen Buddhism. And I have a love of Japan. And so when I discovered Shingon, the Japanese version of Vajrayana, I was, of course, very interested. And when I found out that Kobo Dayashi, or Kukai, as he was known while he was alive, had gone to China and received the Vajrayana scriptures right around the same time that Vimalamitra, who's over here, had gone into China with the Vajrayana scriptures, which was their introduction to the Vajrayana scriptures. I thought maybe they had met. I thought, or at the very least, they knew the same people and they were in the same places at around the same time. He was one of the guys that went along with Padmasambhava, or right around that same time, into Tibet. So there's like some direct connections there. Of course, in Shingon, they'll be very quick to tell you that that Shingon is different from Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah, that's true, but they're both Vajrayana Buddhism. There's a term, the narcissism of small differences. I don't know if that specifically applies here, but you know how it is. When someone else is almost exactly like you tend to get hung up on the differences, right? So from my perspective, since Vajrayana was all but wiped out, or maybe completely wiped out from India by the Mughal emperors when they took over, then the only way to really know what was going on in India as far as Buddhism in the 6th and 7th centuries, and maybe before, is to learn everything I can possibly learn about historical Tibetan Buddhism, and learn everything I can possibly know about historical Shingon Buddhism, of course through the eyes of present day, because those are the only eyes we have. And then through triangulation, then I can ascertain what was going on when my wife's ancestors were hanging out in the same neighborhood as these weirdos. I mean, I say that with all respect. I'm a big weirdo, if you haven't already figured that out. So personally, my spiritual orientation, if you can call it that, was largely informed, as far as Buddhism goes, by Eihei Dogen and Zen, or Chan, but kind of through the eyes of Dogen, who was the point in the hourglass between Japanese Zen and Chinese Chan, which it gets confusing because they refer to all the masters of Chinese Chan as Zen masters, but Zen is the Japanese word for Chan. So, in my mind, I differentiate between post-Dogen in Japan equals Zen, pre-Dogen and post-Dogen in China equals Chan, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the only one who does that. Incidentally, just in case you're curious, I try not to make this all about me, but it tends to happen because I'm a big egomaniac. In Dogen's Fukan Zazengi, he was talking about how the lotus position, not the Lotus Sutra, but the lotus position is, Padmasana. I'm so used to saying Padmasambhava, Padmasana. Lotus position is what that means, lotus pose, is the Buddha mind seal. And a person who sits in Padmasana for a length of time will automatically attain nirvana. You don't need anything else. And wow, but then at different points he says, well, you do need a master, but sometimes you don't. There are people who, self-awakened ones, but it's rare. It's easier with a master, and it's like, yeah, okay, Anyway, but anyway, I love Dogen, I love Zen, and I feel fascinated by, and there's like a different part of my mind, the part that kind of like, the dream part, sort of that Jungian realm of like archetypes, where archetypes and mystery overlap, the realm of the gods and angels and spirits and ghosts and all of that stuff. And on that level, I'm fascinated by Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, and also the, as I mentioned, the sentimental attachment because of my dad, and the particular meditation that we performed every morning, the prayer from which I do at the end of these episodes. 8 minutes, 9 minutes, it's too long, Edward. So anyway, in this process of doing this, I decided, because we were going to go to Bodh Gaya, her family's from that region, so I thought that before going to Bodh Gaya, I wanted to hit these books. But knowing me, I thought that the only way that I would, in a disciplined way, read these books is if I do it as a YouTube series, which is just my limitations as a human being. So if you're wondering, some people are like, so what is your goal in doing this? And it's like, well, that's the goal, is to read the books. If I talk 10 minutes out of the half an hour, then that means 20 minutes every day or every other day or however often I get to this. Sometimes I skip a few days to write a book. I write more than I read. Anyway, I'm not like bragging about that. I think it's a problem. But anyway, let's see. Is there anything else? Well, no, not really. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. Oh, if this is your first time seeing me, now that I've talked your ear off for 10 minutes, go ahead and click here instead and start with episode 1 of Dhammapada. And I'll continue to read this until I just ordered some Pāli books, and So when they arrive, I'll decide as we go whether I want to, splice one in the middle of this, or if I want to read the whole thing and then get to those, probably the former, but we'll see how long they take to get here and all that. They're coming from England. They were very difficult to find. I went on Amazon, not to give a plug to old Bezos, but anyway, I went on Amazon and I was like, oh, good. Oh, this is everything I'm looking for. Great. And I'm add to cart. And I'm like, and it's like, yeah, it's all translated from Pali into Burmese. And I'm like, oh, I don't speak that. And I remove everything from the cart, and I did some research, and I found this organization in England that has all the translations, and they'll send it directly. I had to become a member to get the 20% discount. But it's going to be a lot of books, so I'll probably have to rearrange that whole situation over there, and there may end up being an entire shelf just of Theravāda. So I'm looking forward to that. That means it'll be a very long time before I have to read the Lotus Sutra again. Okay, picking up right where we left off. The Theravadan tradition tells of councils, or sangitis, being held to recite the Canon, of which the third was held in the time of Ashoka. So this is after Buddha passed away. The monks that continued the practice that he taught them, that they kept going, presumably under Shariputra or Ananda, or one of them and then the other one. These are bits that you'll find like reference made in Mahayana that actually are from Theravada, as opposed to a lot of the other things that are not. But anyway, like worship me and I have a lion throne, that kind of thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll start reading Theravada and say, oh, there's a lion throne here. I didn't realize. Okay, but maybe not. I'm thinking not. Anyway, what was I saying? So after he passed away, they kept the thing going, and then of course it became a school and it became a little bit of a bureaucracy. And so I guess it was about 300 years before Ashoka's time. So they had their second, sort of like the ecumenical councils that they had in the early Catholic Church, around the time of Ashoka. And then, it was another 500 or 600 years before. I mean, I can only speculate why they came up with Mahayana, or what was going on there. It seems like it was like, okay, it's the new and improved, like Tron Legacy, like the sort of the trying to inject some, like maybe it was becoming less popular or it was becoming bored. People were bored with it. So someone was like, I have an idea. Let's, give it a booster shot, a whole new, Buddhism 2.0, kind of thing, which, I'll try to be more respectful about. But I think that if I have a very solid foundation in Theravada, then maybe I can move on into Mahayana. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll find out that I'm a Theravadan Buddhist after all. But not a monk. Again, this is just a costume. I mean, I wear it with respect, but I'm not a monk. I feel I should point that out. Okay, I'm talking too much again. And although the discrepancies with the northern tradition can't cast doubt upon this, there must have been gatherings of some sort where recitations took place, and the imprimatur of the Sangha was bestowed. Sangha, I guess, would be like ecclesia or something, the community, basically, the Buddhist community. Such councils would inevitably have led to a normalization of the language of the canon to a greater or less extent. So we're still talking about the language of the canon, basically. We haven't really gotten into what it says. We're just talking about the language. That's fine. We spent 2 hours talking about how Manjushri remembered from former lives people giving Lotus Sutras in previous old habits. So we can deal with a couple of episodes about this, I think. In my humble opinion. I mean, I'm the one making this, right? So, all right. Since the normalized language was an ecclesiastical one, see, there we go, being recited by monks who probably spoke a variety of languages and dialects, there is no necessity to assume that it coincided exactly with any one particular spoken language. It has been claimed in the case of Pali that there are that there are resemblances between it and the Girnar dialect of the Ashokan inscriptions, and also between it and the language of the Hathigumpha inscriptions. Pāli must have been the language of one or other of these two areas. A careful examination of the language of these inscriptions shows that Pāli is not identical with either of them, and there is, moreover, some doubt about the language of the Girnar version of the Ashokan inscriptions, since it is possible that it represents, in part at least, the scribe's attempt to convert the Eastern dialect he must have received from Pataliputra, Pataliputra. Sorry. And I'm sure I butchered that translation, but at least I got all the letters in there this time. Into what he thought was appropriate to the region in which the edict was being promulgated. There's a word I don't use every day. Rather than the actual dialect of that region. I should start trying to work it into conversation. Hey, are you promulgating? Have you been promulgating lately? Anyway. The language of the Hathigumpha inscription, although it agrees with Pāli in the retention of most intervocalic... I went with my friend Yogesh. Hi, Yogesh. Are you watching this? Anyway, I went with him and a few others a few years ago, 4 years ago now, a little over 4 years ago, I think, to the old caves outside of Pune, where there's Ashok era. There's a stupa in there, and there's inscriptions that believe the inscriptions they're talking about right now. So I'm going to put some of that footage at the end of this video. And I was like, what does that say? I mean, of course, I knew that they wouldn't know. And they were like, oh, I can't read that. I wouldn't have expected them to. It looks nothing like Hindi or Sanskrit or anything that exists today. But hopefully they'll be, I think if not part of a video, there's got to be a photograph that I'll do a zoom in on at the end of this video, and I'll cut the video a little bit before half an hour so that those 2 or 3 minutes don't push it up to 35 minutes like the last one, because I try to keep them around half an hour. Yes, the retention of most intervocalic consonants, and in the nominative singular in suffix O, nevertheless differs in that the absolutive ending is suffix parentheses T and parentheses TA with a line over it. All right. And with two doubtful exceptions, there are no consonant groups containing R. While it is not impossible that there existed in India in the 3rd century BC, or BCE, if you're into that sort of thing, an unattested dialect of Middle Indo-Aryan, which had all the features of Pāli, the fact that some of the consonant clusters found in Pāli are unhistoric and must therefore represent incorrect attempts at back formation. Ooh, have you been promulgating back formation lately? I'm going to start asking that on the street out here in New Delhi, see what people say. Anyway, back formation, yes. E.g., is that... so I'm just showing my ignorance here. I'm reading a very scholarly academic book, but I'm the sort of guy that plays Zelda Breath of the Wild all day, and then every once in a while says, honey, I'm going to go record Buddhist books for half an hour. That's my life. That's what you're seeing. That's what you're not seeing in the background. Wow, that smoke has a nice effect. I think I might do that again. I'm like crisp in the foreground. Maybe it's the lighting and the smoke. All right. Anyway. Okay, so e.g. disva, right? Which cannot be from durstva. People who actually know this stuff, I'm sure, are cringing right now. And atraja, which cannot be from atmaja. Cannot. makes it more likely that by the 3rd century BC, the dialect of the canonical texts of the Theravādins conformed to the general pattern of Middle Indo-Aryan dialects at the time. Right? Obviously, I guess. And all, not obviously at all. And all consonant clusters had either been assimilated or resolved. It is probable that this represented the form of the language of the Theravādan canon at the time of the reign of Ashoka, which was perhaps the lingua franca. They're saying it too. I was saying it kind of as a joke, but they're saying it seriously. For those who don't know, that's like a term which means like the language that everybody speaks. So lingua franca, like, is French for the French language, isn't it? Or is it Latin for the French language? Referring to places where everybody speaks French. Naturally, it's probably more accurate, I guess, to say the English language, because I'm pretty sure that in the end, more people ended up speaking English than French. I mean, it's not good either way. I mean, maybe that's a debate, right? But nobody really is having that debate these days. But you can see old black and white footage of people having that debate. Is it good or not that everybody has a common language in the world because of colonialism? I mean, generally people don't consider colonialism to be a good thing these days, right? I don't. But it is convenient, I admit, that so many people in India speak English, because it makes it easy enough for me to go do things here and there without Priyal having to translate everything. All right. Which I feel bad about. Don't get me wrong. I feel terrible. I used to feel more terrible, but I got used to it. I'm just being honest here. Things kind of are the way they are, Like, when you're a little kid, when you're 6 and 7 years old in school, and they tell you about the genocide of the Native Americans and slavery and all this stuff, you feel terrible. You feel really bad. And into your teenage years and into your early 20s, you feel bad. And then you kind of still feel bad when you're 40, but it's not quite as much as when you were 7, And though some of my ancestors were the British that colonized the New World, that they now call the United States of America, and they were cousins of the British that colonized India, like, the situation with India doesn't feel as personal to me as if I go to, like, downtown Los Angeles and see, a lot of African American people displaced and homeless and that kind of thing. That feels like I should do something about it. And, not like bragging here, but I worked with those Mother Teresa nuns, the Missionaries of Charity, and cooked and did a lot of gathering donations and stuff like that to go around and try to at least give people food, not like helping people get jobs or anything, but other people were doing that. And I don't know. When I see abject poverty, I don't know. There's a process that goes on. Does it go on for you too? People get uncomfortable when I talk about this because everybody kind of thinks about it, but nobody talks about it, except for the people that do. And usually those people are angry and sometimes self-righteous. Like, people get on kind of a high horse about judging everybody else for the systemic imbalance in the world, but they're doing it from a position of privilege. So I don't know. Is it even something that can be fixed or talked about? Or, like, sometimes in private conversations with my friends who also lean left, we try to brainstorm about, like, Maoist revolution doesn't work very well. Stalinist revolution doesn't work very well. The Fight Club scenario is dated, and Mr. Robot, that scenario doesn't work very well. And while it seemed for a minute between 2009 and 2011 like there was some kind of hacker army that was going to save everybody, it turns out that's not the case. And Some of them are working for Russia, some of them are working for the U.S. government, some of them are working for corporate America, and then the rest of them kind of like are divided between the people who care, the people who don't care, and the people who care are actually a very small minority. Everybody got on board with let's attack Scientology. Everybody got on board with let's attack Iran. It seems now from what I'm seeing on YouTube is a lot of the kind of really, really skilled hackers in America are enjoying themselves by harassing and terrorizing the Indian con artists that are, the companies that try to scam people, calling old ladies and saying, hey, I'm calling from Social Security, we need all your information, and then, haha, I got your money. So they, it's, it's like, okay, yeah, you should kind of poke at those people, but it's like layers of problematicness, some of the hackers, it's like, okay, they're really good hackers. They're watching through the security camera the guy that they're pretending to be an old lady and talking to, and letting themselves get ripped off, only to turn it around on them at the last minute and delete all their files and say, haha, and make them poo their pants and tell them they ought to be ashamed of themselves and go get another job. And then everybody laughs and feels happy. How much of that is racism? Like kind of in disguise or not so in disguise. But then the hackers will speak Hindi, so then it's like, oh, well, if he speaks Hindi, he must not be racist. I don't know why I'm talking about this stuff. I just decided to start free associating. Maybe because I got bored with what I'm reading. But what I'm reading isn't actually the Pāli Scriptures. What I'm reading is, I think I got through a paragraph of this textbook about the Pāli Scriptures. And we'll pick up where we left off next time. And, this just how this series is going to go. It's going to go on for a very long time with a lot of episodes. And if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. And I think a lot of that has to do with whether you enjoy, my voice and personality and face or whatnot. Which, well, thanks, if you do. And screw you if you don't. No, I'm only kidding. I love everybody. So, yeah, there's a lot of problems in the world, and Buddhism isn't necessarily the solution to the systemic inequality and racism and war. We've got war happening now. I haven't mentioned it. My God, that whole situation with Russia and Ukraine and senseless death. And anyway, and yeah, it's just as shitty as when America does it. It's true. And America does it more often. That's also true. That doesn't excuse Russia, though, right? Are we on the same page with that at all? No? Or are you on that Trump QAnon bandwagon saying Russia and Putin is going to save Ukraine from child molesters and all this? Like, it's infuriating. Okay, so yeah, we didn't get anywhere. I don't feel any more enlightened after this episode. But that's okay, I think, because that's not what this show is about. This show is a scholarly Pratyeka Buddha, Sutrayana, intellectual yogi attempt at getting nowhere by way of books. So, anyway, right? That's right there in the mission statement. There's no mission statement. Okay, we're coming up on 30 minutes, so I'm going to do the prayer and then show you some images from near Pune, which is near Mumbai, which you older folk would know as Bombay. My dad went to Bombay back in the 60s. I think it was 60, I don't know which year. But anyway, there's a movie that's coming out. I'll go ahead and point to it. I don't remember the name of it, but it takes place in Bombay in the 1960s, so I'm very interested in seeing it, just because I know that, like, if it were really Bombay in the 60s, that my dad and my grandma would be walking around in the background somewhere. So that's fun. And so I'll do the prayer, and then I'll show you the images of where there were monks back in Ashoka's day, back in the time period that we were talking about briefly today. You can see what that looks like with tourists, walking around in it, but you can still kind of get a feel for it. And you can see the stupa. As I mentioned, if you were following the Lotus Sutra stuff before I took it off the playlist, the stupa represents the mind of the Buddha. And back in the day, people would, walk around 3 times and bow to it as part of their Buddhist practice. And then, so what else? And you'll see some of that writing. You'll see some of the. I'll throw in a picture of me meditating in one of the cells that one of the monks would have stayed in, at that same site, that 2,300-year-old Buddhist cave dwelling, site, commissioned by the king at the time. So the reason we love King Ashoka. Maybe he was Magdali, whatever that was that I was mispronouncing last time. The Mauryan kings or something like that. That they were one of the guys that took over most of India during their day. I think maybe if they're the same as Ashoka, I haven't looked into that yet. But yeah, he felt bad about all the violence from his own taking over India, and so he decided to become devoutly Buddhist and reject violence and killing of all kinds, and then to promulgate Buddhism all over India and beyond into China. There's Ashoka pillars in present-day China that were built in the time of Ashoka, commissioned by Ashoka, or Asoka, or the A is silent usually. So yog is how you actually say yoga, so if someone's from India or not based on how they say it. Although there's some backflow where there's like westernized yoga in India now, and I'm going to try to do something about that by reading these black books, and then the red book, and then the Serpent Power, and then the Psychology of Kundalini, and then a proper translation of that document, and then I can have more pinpoint accuracy as to the actual influence that Jung had on the introduction of the chakras and the Kundalini to the West. And then I can start to... Anyway, I've talked too much, and this is going to be 35 minutes again, isn't it? Let's do the prayer, and then I'll show you the caves. All right. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us, and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Thank you for going on this ride with me. Until next time.
Sukaya Vedanaya Sambayutta Dhamma Vipaka